I wanted to take a deep look of what happens when a Pokemon Dynamaxes to get a better understanding of how the game works. Because anyone can say, yeah, the Pokemon gets bigger, gets a lot more health, and does more damage, but I wanted to know how much more damage this is compared to other options, because you lose the choice item. So is it actually just kind of better for some Pokemon to use choice items instead of Dynamaxing and going for that level of damage? Also, how much more important is that bonus health, and just a few other things to help optimize the usage of Dynamax inside the game, or maybe find new Pokemon that people aren't Dynamaxing that would actually be better off with the Dynamax factor. So if you end up enjoying this video, please leave a like and definitely share it with all your friends. This is going to be a really good video to make you better at competitive Pokemon, potentially win a lot more battles. So it's also going to be part of my Pokemon Battle Academy. If you're just getting into competitive Pokemon, I recommend checking that out as well. The first thing I wanted to look at with Dynamax is the damage of moves, because that's going to be one of the most important factors. Yeah, it's cool that you get more health and you can survive attacks, but with it only lasting for 3 turns, it's not really going to matter if your opponent Dynamaxes and gets bonus health. We're talking about standard Pokemon while you have the advantage, and you're using moves that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. So I want to take some common ones. We have Thunderbolt, Psychic, Scald, Flamethrower, then we can see how the base power ends up measuring out. So the base power of Thunderbolt is 90. Choiced, it's 135, and then Dynamax, it goes up to 130. So this tells us a lot of things right here, and I don't know if anyone's actually sat down and thought about the numbers. Well, I think people have, but I don't know if you have. I don't know if you really thought about it this way, and that's what I wanted to do. I want to just look at the raw data behind how good the Dynamax max move is, and see if it's actually worth it, or see what it does for other Pokemon. And we can see right here that if you're just running a choice move, like a choice Thunderbolt, you are doing more damage to the opponent. Now, it does lock you in, and you can use Life Orb with a Dynamax, but those are things that we're going to be taking into consideration later. But just flat out, Dynamax, we've seen this damage before, but it is kind of crazy when you can effectively turn any move your Pokemon has into a Draco Meteor level attack, or close combat, or high jump kick. Now, these moves are reserved for very specific Pokemon, so it's really interesting to see what happens when a Pokemon that was never intended to have this power can get access to it with Dynamax. Think a Jolteon that gets a Stab Draco Meteor. It can just kind of happen now, which makes the game a bit more interesting. Also, I want to go and show the base power for all of the other moves, and it's going to be the same in most cases, and we're going to talk about what happens with other moves as well. But when we look at the standard elemental attacks, it's going to jump from 90 to 130, or in Scald's case, 80 to 130, which is going to be more effective than a choice specs. So we have some interesting things happening. However, this is not the end of it, because you can either set terrain or weather effects that give you bonus damage for those moves. So after the first usage, the move is only going to get more and more powerful, such as with Psychic or Electric, setting the terrain, which gives it 30% more damage. And like I said, you can run a Life Orb on top of it, so even though you don't get the 1.5 times damage from a choice item, you have the 30% more damage from a Life Orb, which gives us some absolutely ridiculous base power, and that's before we even factor in same type attack bonus. It gets even crazier for Rain and Sun. Now, Ice moves and Rock type moves are not going to get any kind of bonus damage from their respective weather, but if you get that Rain going, or if you get that Sun going, and you have a Life Orb, we're looking at damage that we would have never thought possible, and that's just from having a Flamethrower. If we're looking at a move that's going to have a higher base power, such as the 110 tier, so Hydro Pump, Fire Blast, Thunder, Hurricane, moves like that, it's actually going to be a bit more interesting. So the choice is going to be significantly higher, because the Dynamax bonus is going to be not as big as we see with the other moves. So 110 becomes 140. Despite having 20 more base power, we're only going to get 10 more power in the max move form, so the choice item is still going to hurt. Now, there's usually some kind of accuracy drawback when it comes to these kinds of moves, and if you already have Rain set up, then your water type moves are getting bonus damage, so in instances like Hurricane, it gets weird. Same thing for Thunder, but either way, we can kind of see that this still scales kind of interestingly. I want to talk about it that if you have everything going on, you have Weather, you have Stab, you have Life Orb, it could also be beneficial to run these moves instead. So what it looks like you want to do is you want to run just the base move. You know, that Thunderbolt, that Ice Beam, it's always going to have the reliability for the damage, but if you are going to be going for the max amount of damage possible, you get 29 more base power out of that 10 extra difference. So instead of Flamethrower being 130, we have Fire Blast at 140, and then that 10 difference is going to get a lot more scaling on top of that. So that's going to push that 253-ish base power move into the 280s, and not much is going to be able to survive that. Now, things get really weird when we're talking about Max Knuckle and Max Ooze from a damage standpoint, because they do not follow the standard Dynamax scaling for the max moves. That close combat actually loses power because Game Freak doesn't want you to have a 140 base power close combat that then turns into 50% more damage. Weird that they're okay with that on Fire Blast, but I guess they don't want a +3 attack to emerge and then one-shot everything for the rest of the game. Weird things happen, so I wanted to show what happens if you just constantly use a max fighting move as opposed to just close combat for the entire duration of your Dynamax. So we're looking at about 360 base power from just raw close combat damage, and then we can see the scaling gets kind of interesting. So by your second usage of Max Knuckle, you're effectively on the same damage. So if close combat is not a one-hit KO against the opponent, then you want to Max Knuckle because you're coming out of that with a one-hit KO regardless. If like close combat is going 2-hit KO but not 1-hit KO, as you can see here, same damage, but now we have a 1.5 times, which means our third Max Knuckle is just going to be a ridiculous amount of damage and then adds damage to our non-Dynamax moves. And then we eventually end up on a higher effective base power with that 190, but then we factor in same type attack bonus and a potential life orb, and now that is going to be the most damage that we've seen so far. So the weird thing is, a lot of people just like look at Max Knuckle and Max Ooze like they're just not that good, but as long as you're converting 2-hit KOs, because you mostly want to use your Dynamax just like one-shot everything or get rid of very powerful threats really quickly, you don't really want to use it to set up too often. But if you have that opportunity where it's like the weaker damage from Max Knuckle finishes off an opponent or combos into another max move, or just would not change any kind of KO factor whatsoever, then you're going to get a ridiculous benefit out of it. Also, much like how I was talking to Thunderbolt turning into a Draco Meteor, we can technically look at it like Brick Break turning into a close combat. It doesn't get nearly as much damage, but Dynamax Brick Break and Drain Punch, or other lower power fighting moves, those go up to 90 base power. So then we use it again, and we're looking at 15 less damage. So you go Max Knuckle, Brick Break, Max Knuckle, Brick Break, back to back, we're only looking at 15 less base power than 2 close combat. And again, when you're factoring in stab or something like that, or life orb or just a high damage Pokemon, that should be a KO on most Pokemon anyways, so you can even use those lower base power fighting moves to then scale into crazy damage and end up higher than a close combat. And then there's also some other weird ones. Focus Punch might have some usage by just being stronger than a close combat Dynamax and giving you a flat 100 base power. Meteor Salt, Final Gambit, Low Kick, Reversal, got some weird stuff going on right there. However, if we take in Life Orb or Choice Band onto the close combat in consideration, then we are looking at insane damage. When you have a banded close combat being used by Stab, it's going to be really close to a +2 Max Knuckle being used, and that's just one-hit KOs anyways without any setup. So if the opponent has a chance to exploit you on your Max Knuckle setup when you're using it, you're just better off with a Choice Band close combat. So from everything I've shown in this video so far, it just kind of shows that the higher base power, you're just better off using Stab and a choice item and then going for the insane damage, even though there is that drawback. When you're using Max Wormwind Draco Meteor, you're not losing 2 special attack. You're not getting your special attack cut in half. So it is a lot different. It does open up those possibilities, but it kind of shows that the damage is something that we can already see and expect out of certain moves inside of Pokemon. And this is why I think that one day I woke up and Duraludon was actually the best Pokemon in the game, because it just takes all those drawbacks, turns it into more damage, and then just dumpsters everything with crazy amounts of base power, good amount of durability, and then just a very high special attack to begin with. So things start getting weird when you look for those Pokemon. That's kind of why I'm doing this video. It's like, oh yeah, you just kind of make a Pokemon work really well, but Duraludon's kind of slow. So we can find an analog for Duraludon effectively trying to do the same things with reasonable amount of damage, then things get really scary. And then there's the other max moves that end up giving some kind of effect as well. Using a steel move is going to boost your defense, using a dragon type move is going to lower the opponent's attack, and I feel that these are less significant than either giving yourself straight stats or setting weather or terrain, but they can matter, and it mostly depends on the Pokemon speed. A faster Pokemon using Max Wormwind is going to feel a massive benefit from that. Dragapult outspeeds everything, hits a physical attacker with Max Wormwind. If that physical attacker survives, now we have a double health pseudo-legendary Pokemon taking 30% less damage. It's going to kind of be nutty like that. And then a slower Pokemon getting these kinds of effects might not matter. That if you're getting hit by 2 overwhelmingly powerful Dynamax moves from the opponent faster, that defense boost might not be enough to save you if it's even the right move against the kind of opponent. So you're not going to see it applied so much in singles, but in doubles it actually could matter because now your ally Pokemon is receiving all of these benefits as well, or the opponent's other attacker is going to be losing stats, and then that's going to be something that makes them easier to KO. But for the most part, I think it's based on the damage that's going to be the most appealing factor of the max moves, which kind of offsets what I was trying to look for earlier. Now I just want to go I was hoping that before I went into all this math and all these numbers and stuff, that I'd just be able to say, why are you Dynamaxing when you can just choice specs or Life Orb and win the game anyways? Dynamax isn't that powerful, but the benefits that you get from the moves and the on-demand access with the safety of the health, yeah, Dynamax matters a lot more than I thought, but then that also means that there's probably more Pokemon that can utilize it better than what we're seeing in the current meta. So that's kind of like the summary that I have for this video, and I just want to kind of go down and show you guys what is going on here. I don't really see too many instances where we're going to see like a lower power move be used for that buff, because there's like really interesting ones. Nuzzle goes from 20 power to 90. But the reason why moves have a lower power is mostly because of their secondary effect. Charge Beam has a good chance to buff your special attack. So putting that to 100 instead, it's like, yeah, I'd rather have that special attack and then swing into it or something. Same thing with Nuzzle. Nuzzle, you want to paralyze your opponent so you outspeed them. So if anything, you Nuzzle, get them slower, then Dynamax, then get benefits while you're KOing them, but you're not getting that 90 power plus a paralysis or anything like that. And then just, other ones, Max Quake, Earthquake goes from 100 to 130. See, that's like not insane, but it still works. If you just want a higher damage, super effective Earthquake to secure a KO, you're going to see it like that. Then we even see it on Dig, Drill Run, Earth Power, High Horsepower. So the lesser Earthquakes become more powerful, and then like you've seen a Life Orb Garchomp using Earthquake before. If Garchomp, when it becomes available through the future DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield, if it Dynamaxes and uses an Earthquake, it's not going to be a surprising crazy amount of damage. So this is another thing I'm looking for, is like what moves are going to be the most effective to make use of. Like I talked about, it's just any of the big drawback moves, but we don't have that for ground. We don't really have too many analogs for rock as well, and then the offensive coverage is going to be pretty limited, like Max Starfall, Moonblast, or Dazzling Gleam, it's all the same. So that's not going to matter if you're just Dynamaxing and going for the raw damage. But then it's like the fighting moves, the steel moves, the elemental moves. This is where we start to see some really weird stuff come through. And it's like you can tech in an explosion. So you have 3 turns of 150 power. If you survive, now you have a 250. And that's, in theory, is 4 dead Pokemon. So things kind of break down like that. And then just understanding the damage numbers as well. So here we have a neutral nature 100 base special attack Pokemon using a same type attack boosted move with no items involved. However, I will kind of show the damage scaling right here. Like the secondary Shadow Ball, this is going to be buffed artificially to 120 power, so it has a choice specs effect. And we're just attacking something like a Silvally, uninvested, but a very high defensive analog towards like even an uninvested Silvally is going to be far more bulky than most sweeping Pokemon, and it's going to be around like some kind of off tank or not like hard dedicated tank. You might find a full hit points, full special defense Pokemon, but if you find like a high hit points, low uninvested special defense Pokemon, or a high special defense uninvested with a low hit points max invested Pokemon, it kind of gives you the same idea. So it's like the average Pokemon you're going to find and want to run over, I like using Silvally for. So just a straight up Shadow Ball against a neutral hit on the Silvally. It's a 3-hit KO, 100 special attack, isn't really that impressive. Now if we have choice specs, which has the drawback of locking us into it, that's going to be a 2-hit KO. Using the Ghost type max move, that's going to be still a 2-hit KO, nothing too crazy. And then for this last Shadow Ball, I want to show you what would happen if it was like a theoretical Draco Meteor. So like let's go Draco Meteor with choice specs, so that's why it's like 130 plus the 50% to give us to a 195, and then that isn't even going to be a 1-hit KO, but kind of shows that anything below us is going to be a lot more easy to KO. So let's go into another Dragapult, and this is also where like the numbers start getting like pretty wild and stuff. So this 200% means we KO with a choice specs Draco Meteor non-Dynamax factor right here. That's just going to be a KO onto a Dynamax Dragapult. So we can still creep into some pretty high damage numbers on these super effective hits. That's kind of what we're looking for. Other than that, just like a straight up, uninvested, nothing Shadow Ball, not really going to have it. Specs has it, Life Orb has it, Dynamax has it. But then there's still Pokemon that are more frail than the Dragapult. So Cinderace, we start to find some interesting numbers. However, you just can't go into the Dynamax and then expect to blow up a Cinderace. But if we go and tack on a Life Orb, and this is why I'm talking about like those damages, you have to look for a naturally fast Pokemon that doesn't need that much setting up, that can go Life Orb into the neutral nature with a Dynamax move to give us power that we've kind of never seen before on these kinds of Pokemon. And then that's kind of what I was talking about, where it's like Shadow Ball now becomes Draco Meteor with no drawback, and that is a high KO chance on an 80-75 Pokemon defensively. There's other weird ones. Jolteon comes into play because Jolteon has low hit points, but then high special defense, and it's not going to want to invest. However, we don't find those KOs anymore. So this is where it's like you want to look for a higher special attacking Pokemon. Dragapult is actually a very weak offensive Pokemon, and I think it's one of the worst Pokemon Generation 8 because of that. So we just look for higher, more damaging Pokemon. Recreep into that 120, and now everything is just going to kind of get blown up in our way. Let's go back to the Silvally. And we have to change this to like grass or whatever. So it's like, yeah, then this Life Orb, Dynamax, Shadow Ball on a 120 Pokemon uninvested, that's still not going to be enough to KO, but as we saw, we start securing ranges creeping up into that. So 85, 95, not a KO. 85, 85. Starts finding some very reliable KOs and stuff like that. And now we can apply this to have a good bit of fun, because what happens if we're taking the maximum amount of damage and we're just talking about like a neutral, non-stab kind of setup. So we're going to take the Thunderbolt, we're going to manually play with it for a bit. So with terrain, with the max move, that is going to push this move up to an effective 169 base power. And against Pokemon like Silvally, we have good damage, but remember, we're going to be doing a lot of other dirty things with this, so we can go Life Orb. Life Orb now pushes that into a 75, and then if we had a Modest Nature or a Quiet Nature or something that gave us damage, that's going to be pretty crazy. And in theory, what if we were an electric Pokemon? Everything gets one shot. So that's the power of like fast, with Life Orb, using all of that stuff, we get even more damage if this Pokemon is going to be going for some kind of rain setup. So instead of 169, we have 195. So I think this is where it's going to change what we should be looking for with utilizing Dynamax and going into combos and stuff like that. Where's the Pokemon that's like, it can use a fire type move, but also has super effective hits against everything that resists that fire type move, or most Pokemon, or like common meta threats and stuff. I think it's going to take a little bit of like exploration to find the optimized Pokemon, but I think once you get there, it starts getting really scary, and you can just one-shot everything. You don't have to worry about your non-stab moves, you don't have to worry about resisted hits, you can just kind of prioritize what you need to, and then everything goes away, and then you can kind of transition this to set up in doubles more effectively. Then that brings us into more things. We can look at Helping Hand here. Incredible damage. If Silvally Dynamaxes, and we have a Pokemon that is using a Flamethrower, but getting scaled to the maximum level, we can take out Dynamax Silvally in a neutral hit. Nuts. And then we can also look at things like Battery, Vikavolt in the game, so you just scale that down into the pre-evolution. Charge Bug, Battery, maybe behind a Reflect Light screen, so you get that extra turn to make sure everything sets up properly. So there's a lot of things that are in play right now when it comes to what you can do with this knowledge of Dynamax, and then it's only going to get more complex as more and more Pokemon become available. So I think it's just kind of like shedding light on how to utilize this damage to where nothing stops you. And then new Pokemon are going to emerge because of that, instead of just like, this Pokemon's already strong, I'm Dynamaxing. But there's like more strategy that can be involved here that makes things really cool. And then going back into the Pokemon like Duraludon, this is what I mean. It's like Duraludon has the 115 defense. You're safe to go Modest Nature, so you're getting 10% more damage right there. You're maxing out your hit points. That's just going to give you even more health if you go for the immediate Dynamax. And then it's just 140 base power moves coming through and doing some pretty crazy stuff. And you can also look at it in some of the other ways where it's like, well, if I use back-to-back Thunder, Thunder is then getting that 30% boost. So Thunder goes from 66 to 86, and if it's a Pokemon less tanky than the Valley, then we're starting to get that scaling into it. So naturally, you want to look for a Pokemon you can finish off easily and then go into bigger damage from. Now, this video was just the base amount of research. I'm not going to show you guys some of the Pokemon I'm thinking of using for Dynamax just yet, because I want to lab it. I want to kind of like just go through the entire Pokedex, maybe wait for the Isle of Armor, maybe see what other Pokemon are coming out and how those damage numbers are going to change around and stuff. You know, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when Talonflame gets access to the Dynamax factor or something like that, and also how much it's just going to change up singles and or doubles. So there's a lot of cool things in play right now. I also want to open this up to you. You know, knowing this information, maybe you can try to look for trends, maybe you can try to look for patterns, maybe you can try to look for overlooked Pokemon, combos and stuff like that, because that's what makes Hawlucha so good when you Dynamax it. You Dynamax Hawlucha because you go for a flying type move, and then you finish them off with a max knuckle, and now you have +1 speed, +1 attack, you secure another KO, and you have whatever other stats are coming from that. So now you're just a Hawlucha with a free choice band, a free choice scarf, and you're able to switch around moves and stuff. So you can get a lot of really cool effects out of it. I also don't think there's any problem with like when I look at this, when I look at all the other numbers, and I look at all the other things that we've seen, I try to compare it, I don't really feel like there's a problem with using a choice item with a Dynamax if that choice item can help propel you into and through the Dynamax. So like, you get a first attack on a choice item, that's enough damage to like finish off the opponent or set you up into that Dynamax, and then you get all of your benefit from Dynamax, and then you leave it, and now you're still choice locked, but you have enough benefit to where that choice lock doesn't matter. Or you just kind of open it up afterwards, where it's like, okay, I Dynamax immediately, do tons of damage, get those stats, I come out of it with a Scarf, and now I have my selection of what I want to do with now my height and speed, now that my bonus health is worn off and stuff like that. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.